Each new day brings us 24 hours, 1,440 minutes, 86,000 seconds, each moment a precious gift from God, each calling for us to be good stewards, mindful that one day we have to give an account for how we spent the time God loaned us, how effectively we have redeemed the opportunities He provides. Acts 24 is about a man that did not use time effectively. William Penn said this: "Time is what we want most, but what we use worst." Welcome to the 260 journey. The man who wasted time is Felix, and he is a king. And in Acts 24, we read his story. He heard a 3-point sermon preached by one of the best preachers, the Apostle Paul. In fact, it was a sermon that made a king tell the preacher to stop. Let me read to you the story in Acts 24:24. But some days later, Felix arrived with Drusilla, his wife, who was a Jewish, and sent for Paul and heard him speak about faith in Christ. But as he was discussing righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come, Felix became frightened and said, "Go away for the present. When I find time, I will summon you." At the same time, too, he was hoping that money would be given to him by Paul. Therefore, he used to send for him quite often and converse with him. But after 2 years had passed, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus. Listen to an old Methodist preacher, Halford Luckick, and how he reminds us of the mistake of Felix. He said there is a unique characteristic about time that we overlook. We can lose time, but we can never find time. We have to make time. Felix found lots of moments for what he wanted to do to satisfy his curiosity about Paul and to open up the way for a possible bribe. He would send for Paul frequently in verse 36, but he found no time to face the biggest issue and the biggest question that confronted his soul. Such moments are never found, but those moments have to be made. And what we conclude from the passage is that he never found time to deal with the most important issue of his life, which was eternity. Here's how it reads in the Message. It's pretty raw. As Paul continued to insist on right relationship with God and his people, about a life more of moral discipline and the coming judgment, listen to this: Felix felt things getting a little too close for his comfort and dismissed Paul. "That's enough for today. I'll call you back when it's convenient." To say I don't have time is like saying I don't want to or I'm not interested. Time is a strange commodity. We can save it, retrieve it, relive it, stretch it, borrow it, loan it, stop it, or store it, but can only use it or lose it. Felix lost it. A.W. Tozer said it like this: "When you kill time, remember that it has no resurrection." Felix heard a sermon that keyed on righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come, and he got frightened. I know that feeling because it happened to me. I was 12 years old and picked up a comic book at a youth camp, a church youth camp. It was called The Late Great Planet Earth. It was the kid version of the book by the same name by Hal Lindsey that dealt with the end times and, like Paul, the judgment to come. I was struck with such conviction and fear that I was not ready for the rapture, that I sought out my counselor at 12 years old to get things right with God. I felt what Felix felt when someone speaks about the judgment to come. What I learned was this: when you don't do something about the conviction of the soul, the intensity is not quite as strong as it was like when it happened before, and it seems to lessen as it continues on. The more we ignore the voice of God towards obedience, the harder it is to act after it's ignored. When God speaks, respond. When you feel convicted about something, then do something. Felix got convicted, and all he did for 2 years was listen to Paul, but he wouldn't respond to Paul. It seems he never felt that way again. And then verse 27 says, he's out and another king comes in. Make use of time wisely, especially if it's dealing with your soul in eternity. Mother Teresa said it like this: "Yesterday's gone, tomorrow hasn't come. We have only today, so let's begin now." Thanks for joining the 260 Journey.